Hello. Hello everyone. Or hello weirdos. I am very tired and in a bit of pain, partially from my ankle, but also partially just from shit that's happening. But you know what? I'm doing okay. Like, honestly, it's manageable. It's manageable with medicine. And I just took some Advil. So I'll be okay. It's expected pain. I don't know if that helps at all, but I am in pain. I was thinking that, like, this setup, like, I didn't know how big of a fan I was going to be, but you know what? I actually kind of like it. So depending on how the audio quality turns out, we might like it. I just put these up behind me and it makes me so happy that I managed to put them up because, it just brings so much life, I think, into my room. Anyway, I'm also wearing my "You Are Not Qualified to Talk to Me" shirt, which is a reference to The Untamed. And what we're talking about today is all of the books that I read in October. How many did I read? 11? 12? Somewhere in there. I'm super bad at knowing this stuff. I should know it off the top of my head. Let's get started with the very first book that I read. And that is My Country, My People. This is by Lin Yu Tang. And I am going to put this down and put a picture of, like, the actual book because this is just a naked dust. Doesn't have a dust jacket, which is fine. So I thought it would be more of like a memoir, talking about the author's, like, own experience, like, growing up in, like, 1930s China. But it's really more of an autoethnography or something like that. But basically where the author is talking about their own people and trying to explain it to, like, a Western audience. And so I wasn't expecting that. I did not find it as engaging as I thought I would, if I'm honest. And I did read this without an audiobook because no audiobook existed. So I thought it was kind of, like, interesting to see, like, the different perspectives on, like, things like poetry and calligraphy and politics. But my brain was also just like, it's so much more complicated than just what is in the book. And almost like the book wasn't long enough to fully get all of the nuances of all of these things. But as a general overview, I thought it was pretty interesting and pretty good for, it being a book written in the 30s. Sorry, I thought I was in less pain. And I'm realizing that I'm in more pain. I don't necessarily know if I would recommend it to people. I mean, maybe, like, read sections of the book, but I don't necessarily know how important it would be to read the entire book. And that's just kind of where I stand on it. It is very interesting to see, like, compare and contrast stuff that I've learned now and stuff back then, because obviously the 30s was it's not way before, but it was before, the whole communist revolution. And it was before a lot of, like, the overhauling of, it's not coming to me, the names of things, but overhauling a lot of, like, the traditional values and kind of sort of out with the old and in with the new things that Mao instituted. So yeah, and I think that people in China now are still kind of reeling from that. But anyway, which is 6 Crimson Cranes. This is by Elizabeth Lim, and this is the first book I have read by this author, and I actually greatly enjoyed this. This is the first book in a series. I don't know how many there are going to be totally, but essentially you have this main character. She is the princess. She has 6 brothers and a new stepmother who they have a complicated relationship with, and who ultimately curses her and her brothers. Her brothers turn into cranes, and upon nightfall turn back into humans. But for her, every word she speaks one of her brothers die. So that's very interesting. And she also has like, she looks different than she is, and all of them are cast out of their kingdom. So I thought that this was very interesting. It went places that I was not expecting. And I enjoyed it. And as I was reading, I was like, oh my gosh, we've only got a couple chapters left. We have this whole thing with the dragon pearl. How are we going to figure that out? And that was and that is stuff we're going to be following in the second book, which I do have a copy of, and I cannot wait to actually read that. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. Would recommend this. The next book that I read is Heaven's Official's Blessing, Volume 3. I thought this again was picking up from where Volume 2 left off. We have more things happening. We get a kiss, spoilers, between our two leads. Yeah, it's kind of hard to talk about the third book or the third volume in a series when there's going to be a total of, I think, 8. Yeah, I'm excited to see where this goes. Yeah, my brain it does not have it together. But that's okay. The next book that I read is Under the Whispering Door. This is by TJ Klune. And this was not as good as the first book. Not the first book. Oh my gosh. House on the Cerulean Sea, in my opinion. But I still really liked it. I came away from this book and I was like, oh my god. Like, TJ Klune is very quickly becoming one of my favorite writers just in general because of the way he's able to write characters and character arcs. And the fact that, like, all of his books are gay. Like, those things are, like, all checking a lot of boxes for me, and makes me very happy. At first, I didn't understand what this, like, stag creature was. After reading the book, it made sense. And this is about a man who was kind of seen as a little bit of an asshole. He works as a lawyer. He puts his job before everything and anything. And he kind of was a dick to his wife, which kind of led to their divorce. And just in all round is not the best guy to be around. He winds up, I think, having a heart attack of some kind and dies. And that's kind of where the book sort of takes off. Is because he is brought to this tea shop that is pictured here. And it's kind of a place of transitions. And so he has to work on transitioning to go through this whispering door. I just think the way that TJ Klune is able to write his characters and all of that is just amazing. And I have been sleeping on TJ Klune for too long, and I will. Yeah, he's becoming like an automatic buy for me and read at some point. So yeah, huge fan of this, and I cannot wait for his next book to come out. The next book that I read is One Last Stop. This is by Casey McQuiston, who's also the author of Red, White, and Royal Blue. This is a sapphic romance. You have this this young woman. She's living in New York trying to make ends meet. She takes the subway, and on the subway she meets this other young woman who she only bumps into on the subway and is basically trapped on the subway and is also trapped out of time. I also really enjoyed this. This is a kind of a book that I give to my friends who want sapphic romance. My friend led me to believe that there was a lot of spicy stuff in here. There is not. There are a couple of scenes. So if you do enjoy spicy things, there's a bit, but if you don't know that that's there, it's very easily skippable. And maybe that's just me knowing that my friend grew up in a very, very sheltered home where they struggle to even say the word sex out loud. So maybe that was just dumb of me and on me. Yeah, I highly enjoyed this. I think the little bit of like where it doesn't, where it kind of falls flat, and saying it falls flat is a little bit of a disservice because I don't really think it falls flat. But the part where it just kind of lost me is trying to figure out the whole reason why this person is stuck on the train. And a part of me is just like, maybe you just should have like not explained that. Who cares really in the grand scheme of things when you get a cute sapphic romance out of it, right? The next book I'm going to be talking about is Lore Olympus Volume 3, and this is running into the same problem as the next one. We're kind of still in the material that I have read in these published like thick hardback things, so I already know everything that's going to be happening in like these books, so it's hard for me to really judge. But this goes from episodes 50 to 75. Yeah, I mean, they're solid, they're great, the art is nice, I like it. I like Rachel Smithy's like whole everything. Yeah, I don't really have much to say about this because it's good. What do you want me to say? It's Lore Olympus. It's all over Webtoon for good reason, in my opinion. I will continue to buy these things for a while. So, yeah. Very, I think, kind of like anticlimactic on my feelings on that one, because I think my feelings are just kind of there. The next book that I read is Where the Crawdads Sing. This is by Delia Owens. I was on board with this book. I was totally on board with this book. I was here for this isolated young woman dealing with how to survive and dealing with the trauma of just having an abusive father and basically everybody abandoning her, including her mom and her siblings. And dealing with abusive boyfriends. And boyfriends who I do not believe are good people. Where it lost me was the ending. And I was very upset. So I'm just going to talk spoilers because I need to express my feelings because of how upset I was. So you have the main girl, what is her name? Kaya, who first dates this guy, Tate. She meets Tate. There is a major age gap that I was uncomfortable with. I forget the exact ages, but he, to his credit, was pushing her away. But I also kind of had the distinct impression that he only really wanted to be with her because of her exoticness. And because he could use his power over her to get the sort of attention that he wanted over like other people, over other women who just, he could not exert that power. And I just didn't think he was a really good guy. If I'm honest, he like abandons her when he needs to go off to college, and he is just a coward in the fact that it takes him so long to own up to those mistakes, and he really hurts Kaya, and I just don't think he does enough to rebuild that relationship, especially because of how much it hurts her and how he was really one of her only remaining connections, and he severed that for very selfish reasons, in my opinion, right? And then a couple years later, and I'm not going to, and I just think that the whole relationship between Tate and Kaya is very predatory in general because of their age gap. I forget the exact numbers, or I would tell you, but it made me uncomfortable. It felt very pedophilic in nature on Tate's end, and that's just my opinions about it. And then Kaya falls in love with this other guy a couple years later called Chase. And Chase is worse. And I think Chase is made worse. So when you compare Chase to Tate, Tate looks a lot better. But really both of them are trash, in my opinion. Chase definitely views Kaya as just this exotic person that he can exploit and manipulate and get what he wants out of her. He pressures her into sex, attempts to rape her, is just in general a terrible dude, and is constantly cheating on his wife with Kaya, and Kaya is unknown and manipulates her and uses her desire for companionships and relationships in order to manipulate and abuse her. And I just right, Chase, total sleazeball. So when he dies, which that is the whole thing, I was like, oh my god, oh no, how terrible. Chase is dead, right? Gross. Like I said, I think Chase is there to make him seem just terrible. The whole plot of this book is trying to figure out who murdered Chase, and people immediately point the finger to Kaya and say it was her, and they go through this whole trial and she is proven innocent because of the lack of evidence, which I was very much on board with the lack of evidence. Oh my gosh, I keep knocking this with my foot. But I was very much on board with the lack of evidence, and it made sense to me. And then we find out in the very last pages of the book, after she gets together with fucking Tate, and I was like, no, come on, don't do this to me. Don't get back with him. Be your own solid, independent woman. That's the ending I wanted for Kaya. I wanted Kaya to be out by herself and find fulfillment in being alone and not needing a man for external validation. And I just felt like we did not get that because she winds up falling in with Tate and just rather quickly after Chase dies. And I was just like, no, I don't have a problem necessarily with them becoming friends. I think that's fine. But to rekindle their romantic relationship after what he did to her and how much it hurt her specifically, I just didn't get it and didn't like it. And then you find out after she dies that Tate finds these not these poems that she wrote, and he finds this one poem of basically her admitting to killing Chase. And that just really upset me because I felt that the case presented by the defense made sense to me, and how it was just not feasible for her to get their end back. Because basically she wound up murdering him in this one place, and then she was seen in this other town that takes a couple hours to get to. So she would have had to go to the other town, be seen there, go back, and then go back to this other town. And it just bothered me. So I see why people like it, but it made me real frustrated. And I don't know if I want to get rid of this book or not, because I was just very frustrated and not happy by the ending. Rant done, I guess. I was just so disappointed because it just wasn't what I wanted. Anyway, continuing on to this one, which is Once There Were Wolves. This is by Charlotte McConaughey. I can't pronounce that, but I can't pronounce anything half the time. This is a book where it talks a lot about rewilding. It's nonfiction, but you have this main character. She's trying to rewild part of Scotland, and by doing that her part in that is by bringing back the wolves and having this new wolf population. It's a lot more than that because it dives a lot into her experience growing up and with her father and her twin sister. And on the whole, I don't want to say it was like the best book ever. This kind of also involves like a murder mystery because one farmer who has been very anti wolves goes missing, and we know is dead because the main character finds this person and hides the evidence because she is worried that it will be pinned on the wolves, and the farmers will go into a whole murder the wolves frenzy. It was very like thought-provoking because just kind of on how the main character ruminates about things, how the main character experiences things like pain, like if she sees pain, she will literally feel it, which was an interesting concept played with. And also kind of like deals with like trauma and like abuse that she and her twin sister have to go through. It was, I don't quite know how to feel about it because like I didn't hate it, but also like was not like, this just isn't a genre that I read. And I read this because I'm reading it for my Goodreads project. Yeah, if this book wasn't like $5 at a library book sale, I don't think I actually would have bought it. That's just kind of how I feel about it. And it kind of served its purpose in my reading stuff that I don't normally read. Anyway, continuing on, Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo. Before I tell you my opinions about this book, I felt very embarrassed because on 2 separate occasions, I was reading this out in public, and by one of the occasions, I had it with me with my kiddos, and by kiddos, I mean students, and they saw it, and they were like, oh my God, you're reading this? And they were super excited. And somebody at a coffee shop like complimented me on the fact that I was reading it, and I just like, I felt so embarrassed because this book series, I do not love. I do not love it the way that other people love it. I think it's interesting. Like, I don't know. It just didn't grip me. It didn't grip me the way that it has gripped other people. I don't think it's bad. I just don't think Leigh Bardugo, YA Leigh Bardugo, is for me. I much prefer the adult stuff. I'm very excited for the sequel to Ninth House to come out. But just the whole Grishaverse, not for me. And that's okay. Like, I definitely picked up more on like the gay themes in this book than the first books. And by gay themes, I mean the explicit gayness of some of the characters and their interactions. I felt like I was missing a lot of that in the first book. But I have 2 more to read for this like whole Grishaverse thing, and then I'm done, and I don't think I'm going to be picking up anymore. I probably would not have read this one if I wasn't trying to read like Rule of Wolves. I feel bad in saying that, but that's just my honest opinion. The next book is Crooked Path to Abolition. It's Abraham Lincoln and the Anti-Slavery Constitution by James Oake. And this I thought was a very interesting piece of history. To me, nothing in this book was really much of a surprise. But this book talks a lot about the struggle to get rid of slavery in America, and specifically focuses a lot on like the constitutionality of slavery, and really picks apart the fact that how the Constitution was upheld by different people at different times for different things. It almost kind of functioned like the Bible. And because the Constitution was written in a way to basically calm the waters, or that's not a great analogy, but the Constitution was written in a way to try and just find a way to get the 13 colonies to all agree to become a new nation. It was by no means perfect, and a lot of how slavery was dealt with, it was kind of trying to have like make its cake and eat it too. And in ways that really, really were able to be interpreted in many different ways and to be used for good and for bad. And for good and for bad, I mean for good as in abolishing slavery, and for bad, upholding slavery. And how, because of the way the Constitution was written, how that affected court cases and those decisions down the line. Thought it was very interesting. I picked this up because some of my students have to read it. I forget which class, but otherwise I thought it was very, very informative. And like I said, I don't really think that I necessarily learned a lot of stuff from this, but if I was a high schooler reading this, I think that I don't necessarily know if I would have learned anything then either, but if I was a normal high schooler, again, I guess normal for the high school that I teach at, this probably would be very, very impactful because the Constitution is just not talked about that way. And having it talked about in a way as just the way that it's talked about here, I think is helpful when we're thinking about history. So I think people now like to view this Constitution as this wholly perfect thing that was perfectly framed and perfectly made is just not true. Yeah, so that's this one. The very last one that I read this month is What Moves the Dead. This is by T. Kingfisher, and I read this in one day because it's very short. And this is like a retelling of the fall of the House of Usher, or Usher. I can never pronounce it right. And this actually has a non-binary protagonist that I was not expecting to appear, which made me really happy, because as I've been going through like my transition and my social transition journey, and it's just great to see like books like this and see representation, and it just made me very happy. I kind of don't want to say much more about this book because I think read it. I remember finishing it and I was like, damn, that's how you do a Fall of the House of Usher retelling. And in a way that doesn't try to make it too much bigger. It is told from the perspective of a friend of the family's. The main character was like in the army with the house head, not the house head, but the Mr. Usher, I guess, the head of the household. There we go. And has come to the house because they received a letter from the lady of the house, who's the head, like Mr. Usher's sister, basically saying, I'm dying, can you come and just, we can make our peace. I love the art on the inside sleeve. Creepy bunnies. I liked it. I don't think I necessarily found it particularly scary, but I did seriously enjoy it. And I picked this up on a whim, and I'm very glad I did because I liked it a lot. So that's all the books. I kind of wanted to give a little bit of a brief of an update from my video from a couple weeks ago, about my uncle, because I received a lot of messages and a lot of kind comments basically saying I hope you're okay. Sorry to hear that you're dealing with everything with my uncle. My uncle is conscious right now. He is recovering. So no dead family members, which is great. My mental health is steadily recovering, and yeah, so everything seems to be going on a positive trajectory, so that's good. Anyways, I'm gonna go lie down because I think I need to, and try and find a way to shove all of these books somewhere on my shelves when I've clearly run out of shelf space, and you know what? There are worse problems to have. Yeah, I think that's it. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye. Hello, I'm coming to you fairly quickly because I forgot to talk about one book, and that book is Broken. I forget who the author is, but famous comedian. I first wasn't super like solid. I didn't know if I would like the book because of the way she talked about audiobooks. Kind of really bugged me. She basically claimed that they weren't reading. At the beginning, she didn't say those words exactly, but just used language oh, you readers, and then would specifically say, oh, well, I guess if you're listening to this book, then you're listeners. And that language bugs me because it devalues how important audiobooks can be to accessibility. And so that really put a bad taste in my mouth at the beginning. But then I kept with it, and I really liked her dark humor. I really enjoyed it. I really thought that she was very relatable. She also has ADHD, which I also have, and so I really connected with her on that because of the writing style. It's very some people would say frazzled, but to me it read very much like just a train of thought. How weird and disparate things connect together made perfect sense to me, and I really liked it. And I could kind of tell as she was writing, she was trying to restrain herself a little bit from doing that as much as she would normally do. And honestly, I just wanted her to bring more of that out, because I quite overall, once I got over that first hump, really enjoyed the book and thought that she was really funny.